What is up? Welcome to PowerHouse Podcast. I am very happy to have a powerhouse in many different ways, which we'll talk about soon. But I want to welcome Kiel Rushton to the PowerHouse Podcast. Welcome, Kyle.
Hi, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How's it going over there in Minnesota?
Oh man, in Minnesota, it's going great. It's a sunny 85 degrees, so loving life.
Awesome. It is a very sunny 108 degrees here in
Oh,
South Lake, Texas.
that's terrible.
I know. Yeah. Just hey,
Oof.
remember that in the winter when you guys were minus
Yeah,
40 and we're 82.
it burns the same.
That is true. That is true. So I met you. Actually, we've never met. We've talked before several times. And full disclaimer, you have been gracious enough to sponsor Stella as with your Fuzz tape company, which we'll talk about later. But we have mutual friends, Tyler and Ryan, who are your training partners in jiu-jitsu, had introduced us, and you've got such an awesome story. I follow you on Instagram. At some point, we will have your Instagram information here below so people can follow you as well. But you actually have a very entertaining and actually, in some cases, a very serious Instagram where you cover some serious topics. So we met. I liked you. I thought you were awesome. And then when I got to see and hear your story, I thought, this podcast is about powerhouses of all industries. And you've come from the law enforcement background. And I've got a ton of questions to ask you about because over what's happened in the past few years, when you say law enforcement, police, and you say Minnesota, it brings back memories to things that happened in 2020 and the summer of love over there that that kind of sparked the whole nation. So I really want to know about all that stuff. But let's just go backwards first and just tell me a little bit about yourself and let's work our way up there.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. But let's see here. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and I was actually abandoned at an orphanage. I didn't no name, no information. Then I was adopted about 8 months later to a lovely couple in Iowa, who are my mom and dad. Grew up in various parts of Iowa until my sophomore year of high school. We moved to Preston, Minnesota. Shout out to Fillmore County. My dad kind of bounced around a lot. We were in Iowa in a few places and then Minnesota. In 2000, I graduated high school, came up to the Twin Cities. I actually started at Concordia University for music education. I was going to be a band and choir director.
Nice.
I watched September 11th happen live on TV, and much like a lot of other elder millennials my age, we saw that we were inspired to a life of service. So I joined the St. Anthony Police Department Police Reserve Program, which is a volunteer program. You wear a uniform, you don't have a gun, and you don't have arrest powers, but you carry out a lot of the auxiliary. I'm guessing in Texas they call it an auxiliary or maybe a reserve force, but civilians that come out and volunteer to do some of the jobs that police might not have or are better served done by someone else, so the police officers can attend to whatever. You learn the job through that. I became a community service officer in 2005, and then a fully licensed peace officer in 2011. In late 2020, I was promoted to detective, and then I left in 2023, and I opened a low-dose hemp and cannabis dispensary.
Hey, thanks for watching the Powerhouse Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now back to the show. But I'm very curious. You left the police force recently in 23, right? When?
I left in early April.
So, and you're a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, correct?
I am, yes.
Training at Alliance, which is a great school.
Yeah, Alliance Minneapolis under Damian Hertz. I started in late 2000 or mid 2016, so I'm coming up on 7 years now. Is that math right? Yeah.
Awesome, cool. So why did you leave? First of all, thank you for your service. I think that's awesome.
Thank you for your support.
I think there's no more difficult, a combination of, in my opinion, difficult and yet underappreciated position in the country. I know it's tough to be a firefighter, but everyone loves firefighters. And it's tough to be in the military, of course, and traveling abroad and stuff. But, everyone with the right mind loves the military. And
Yep.
the same cannot be said about police officers. I'll tell you, three or four of my very closest friends are police officers, and I know it's difficult. So walk me. So thank you again. Why did you leave the force this year?
So things in Minnesota are drastically different than Texas. So we have, um, well, I guess I'll just give you the $10 version here. We have a criminal justice system that it's broken. Um, you've got this defund the police movement, which kind of started in Minneapolis in 2020. Um, you've got a job that's becoming increasingly dangerous. I was assaulted just before I quit by three people, none of which were charged with assault, um, and never booked in jail. I it's just you're out there doing dangerous work. You know, the increase in violence everywhere. I'm sure Texas is no stranger to the increase in violence. And then you've got prosecutors who are giving out sweetheart deals for just not prosecuting, especially during election years, because the county prosecutors in Minnesota are elected. Um, they like their stats to look in a certain direction, and they like their numbers to fit. And then you've got judges who are either elected or appointed who are, I mean, grossly under prosecuting or under adjudicating sentences to people for very, very violent crimes. I mean, you got people who are out after 2 years after taking another life. You've got people who are, um, you know, arrested and out on bond, on zero bond, on multiple shootings. You take all that into consideration, and then you look at the communities that you're doing it for. And I'd say in St. Anthony, where I worked, the community was very supportive of me by and large. Now, you look at the greater Twin Cities metro area, and most of these, well, if you look at Minneapolis specifically, they voted, almost 45, well, it's about 45% of the city voted to disband the police department. So while that's not a winning vote to disband and defund their own police department, that's a weird win, right? It's a weird W. So um, by and large, it just became a losing bet. You're out risking life and limb. They're coming after police officers here in Minnesota. There's the one of the county attorneys has reopened all of the use of force cases in Minneapolis and is reviewing those again to see if the older prosecutors missed anything, because there is no statute of limitations on things like homicide. So and then you've got the uh, state level law enforcement, we call here the BCA. They've created some uh, wide reaching internal affairs style teams to go after police officers for misconduct. Um, and they've rewritten rules, like recently enacted a statute. I think it takes effect tomorrow, that a police officer, and not that this is bad in spirit, but if you examine it, no police officer can be a member of or associate with a hate group. Well, if I sponsor the Boy Scouts for a popcorn sale or whatever they sell, and then suddenly you label the Boy Scouts as a hate group, now I'm, precluded from
Right.
being a peace officer. That, and then just the, I don't know, just the absolute insane spike in crime combined with the absolute plunge in enrollment in law enforcement school. I'll tell you, Dan, to give you a little context, in 2008 or 9, I applied to get into police academy. Every police officer in Minnesota has to go through the same academy. I had to wait a year to get in, and then I was one of 30 people. There was two sections, so I was 30 people in my section, 30 people in another section, 3 times a day, 3 times a year, and there's a waiting list. Now there's I think there's maybe 30, 35 kids total at that same school. So it's the enrollment is almost non-existent. I was actually at a police fair back in April or March. It was early March, a recruiting fair, and there were more police departments than there were candidates. So
Wow.
there's a room full of hungry cops, and we were able to actually snag one guy, recruited him, great kid. So but just it ended up being a losing. I wasn't trying to go down with the Titanic, right? My life means more. I deserve better. My family deserves better.
Absolutely. I mean, the way you're describing it, it sounds like the cities are spending more time to drum up investigations against police officers than they are doing what they need to do to protect the city from the actual criminals.
So it was very pervasive the way it was done, but essentially and it almost seems coordinated, and I don't want to make that accusation outright. However, it's very convenient that the mainstream media on in Minnesota is very quick to you know point out certain details of a story to make it juicier. They slant quite a few stories against the police, even when it's not necessary. It's the little things like an alleged suspect allegedly pointed a gun at a police officer, and the police officer's killed. And then they mentioned that he was, born in another country. It's like, oh, okay. Like you can't just say this guy pulled out a gun. And anyway, so, but anyway, a very, it's almost like a coordinated effort and I don't know what the end game is, but um, by and large, a lot of my friends and um, family who remain in law enforcement, they don't, by and large, feel supported by their, you know, I don't know, the everyday average person, but there's a lot of loud voices, and those voices control politics. They control the media here. They control the judicial system. So it's literally and figuratively, from a legal standpoint, it's dangerous to be a police officer right now, especially in Minnesota.
Which is so counterproductive because you're losing good police officers, which is the antithesis of what the city needs.
Hmm.
All it does
Absolutely.
is just enable um, criminals to be even more violent and do whatever they need to do because there's less people like you. So I'm sorry you had to deal with that. How many? There's so many things I need to say based on just that answer. So I want to go back to a couple of things you said, but how many of your peers, uh, friends, coworkers left this year and last year, like you have?
Well, in this manner, a lot of people leave recently with a PTSD diagnosis through the medical. There's a program where we call it medicaling out. I didn't do that. A lot of those folks that do go through a long, arduous process where you have to prove to a psychologist, both appointed by yourself, your regular medical doctor, and a few others, that maybe you go through you drum up your trauma over and over again, and then you wait 6 months. Not my style. Personally speaking, I don't know. Well, I know a few people that have left, but not just quit like I did. So um, I know of others that you hear about it all the time. Actually, I know a couple from Minneapolis that just decided they were done. A lot of early retirements. I'll tell you that. Like
Did
they're
they
not
try to
just outright
retain you,
quit.
or did they not care?
No, my city fought like crazy. Like I had well, they were doing everything they could, and I think they kind of saw this coming. But like I speak a lot about mental health on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm very open about it because I think that there's that, I fell into it too, that kind of toxic thought that like no one cares. I'm a man, suck it up. Um, well, being a police officer and seeing the things that you see and then dealing with the people that you're dealing with in the community that has been strangely mildly unsupportive or just straight out hates you in some instances, it's hard to deal with. So I wanted to make sure that people saw that it's all right to talk about, how you're feeling, and it's okay not to be okay, and that we should be able to talk about that as men just the same as anyone else. So, but
So we grew up. I'm assuming we're somewhat in the same vicinity of age, although you called yourself a millennial. I'm not. Um,
I'm 41.
you're 41, so you're a few years younger than me. So we probably grew up around the same era where you see a police officer driving by and you wave, and your
With all your
parents
fingers.
introduce you. What's that?
You wave with all of your fingers, not just one.
Right, right. You wave all of your fingers,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and your parents, they tell you, hey, there's a local neighborhood police officer, and
yep.
I know that's certainly not the same. One of my buddies is a police officer in Northern California. I mean, I've heard some stories that they can literally be driving by a grocery store and see someone, a retail store, stealing a 70-inch TV, and they've been told, let them, don't get in the way, and it's crazy to me. I mean, that you have police essentially hiding, not because they're cowards. It's because their bosses, their city, their county, everything you said has scared them into, if you stop a criminal from stealing a police officer, they'll sue the city and you'll lose everything. So it's, but that's why you see cities kind of going to hell. Can I say hell on this podcast? Um,
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody.
well, it's some cities are like war zones. It is hell.
Yep.
So yeah, that is crazy. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Now going, well, you actually said something else because I really want to go back to kind of what happened with the George Floyd situation, primarily because that was in your state. But before I get there, if you're comfortable only in speaking about it, I didn't know about this, but I'd like to hear about. Tell me about this assault. Sounds crazy. You got assaulted by 3 people.
So we got a call up to I can't say a whole lot about it because I think one other person did get charged, but essentially we got a call of a violent domestic assault in progress at a local business. I go up there, start talking to one person. A Another party was started fighting with my lieutenant. He started screaming for help. I go over to help. Um, I grab onto the combative
Your lieutenant
suspect,
is
and
screaming for help.
yep, because he's dealing
Okay.
with this gal who's anyway. So he's getting assaulted. So I step in and we start fighting. I'm getting hit, and then someone else comes over from the other side and punches me in the face. So that person got a free jujitsu lesson. uh,
Great.
in the process of taking that person into custody, a third person came up and started assaulting me and had to be pulled off of me by a random bystander. Um, you know, I wasn't super hurt. I mean, we train in jujitsu. You know how hard you go during training. It's
Sure.
not a foreign state of mind or state of being for me. But when everything, the dust had settled and everyone was in handcuffs and we were code 4 as we call it, I looked around and all these people are recording. Half a dozen people are yelling at you like, "What the hell are you doing?" And then it all just kind of like hit me all at once, where I was like, I don't know what happened yet because we were trying to figure that out, but I know that this isn't worth it. I you know, and I'm panicky because I don't look like the people that we were dealing with. I'll say that. I think that's a safe way of putting it. But um, my main concern was, how is this going to jam me up? What am I going to get charged with now?
Yeah,
Am I
what
going
will
to
you
get
be
charged with
prosecuted
assault?
for? Yep.
Yep. They're coming after cops in Minnesota quite a bit. They just sent a guy to prison for vehicular manslaughter. He was chasing a carjacked vehicle and ran a red light and hit and killed somebody. It's unfortunate, but I wouldn't call it intentional homicide, but it's criminal vehicular homicide. But that's what he's sitting in prison for. So just doing his job in an unfortunate accident. But anyway, so getting back to my deal, I was driving back to the police department and I had a cardiac episode. I was 40 at the time.
You personally?
Heart, yep, heart started racing. I got lightheaded and almost passed out driving. So I pulled into the police department. I wasn't answering or responding correctly, I guess, to my captain. They called an ambulance. My blood pressure is usually 110 over 60. My resting pulse, according to my Apple Watch, is 53. My pulse was like 120, 122. My blood pressure was like 160 over 120.
Right.
And it wasn't coming down.
Sure.
So they took me by ambulance to the medical center downtown Minneapolis, where I was admitted. They, I don't know, they pushed fluids and basically kept me under observation for 3 hours. And I was discharged with instructions to go see a therapist and the cardiologist and get a bunch of stuff done. Anyway, so At that moment, I realized that not only can I not mentally handle this anymore, but it's physically taking its toll on my body. Um, I want to be here to hold my grandkids someday. So that was enough for me.
So in this event that happened, you have the bad guys, the suspects, allegedly, in custody. They, I'm assuming, get booked and something else. They just dropped the charges, and for what reason? Or did they not get booked?
So one person did get booked out of that incident. I think it was the original actor, but everyone else was allowed to go home. So, and to my
And,
knowledge, the people that were released have not been charged yet. I haven't received a subpoena, but
and it's a felony to assault a police officer. Like that's a pretty darn big charge in most cities, states.
yep, it's usually a felony. However, Hennepin County specifically has actually dialed that back quite a bit. The outgoing county attorney changed. They do this tricky thing where they change the policy on things. They made it so if you spit on a police officer, unless it hits their face, it's not actually assault. It's not. You're just discarding bodily fluid. I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
And then they've upped it from, well, the statute says demonstrable bodily harm, I believe, which means you have to demonstrate harm. Merely punching a police officer in the face is not demonstrable bodily harm, I guess. So, despite the cut
How is your
lip and the,
mental state of mind right now since leaving the police force? Relieved,
uh,
better?
I catch up with friends that I haven't seen in 6, 8 months, and they're like, "You're different. You seem different. I feel different. I feel great." I I wake up looking forward to the day. I'd wake up, Dan, and I'd be tight in the chest. Um, I go into work. There's some days where I just sit at my desk and cry because not only am I, working for a community that, I mean, we talked about the community, but and the mission, but you've got so much work ahead of you on a daily basis. I mean, I left with, there's homicides and suicides and child abuse and child sex abuse and all this other stuff, and it never ends. And for what? Like, I'm putting myself in an early grave for what? It's
Yeah.
for $78,000 a year and you know I don't know. It was just too much.
So prior to the George Floyd incident, which I believe was in May of 2020, am I
Yep,
right?
2020. Hmm.
Prior to that, how were you received by your community? Was it like, "Hey, he's a police officer, and thanks for protecting us"? Take me before that Floyd incident.
So I have to go back to 2016. In 2016, our agency had a critical incident, officer involved shooting, where one of my partners shot and killed a black man. The dash camera was released, and he was subsequently prosecuted for second degree manslaughter and reckless discharge of a firearm. He was acquitted on all charges, and then rioting occurred. During that incident, it was live streamed on Facebook, and the gal that live streamed it, who was in the passenger seat, told the world that the police officer involved was a, quote, fat Chinese cop. Well, he was a Latino male, not Asian at all. Um, and then for the next 4 or 5 days until the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension released the officer's name, I was the most hated person on earth because
Because you were the fat Chinese cop.
we were an agency of 23 cops. I was the only Asian guy on the police department. Cop Block Minnesota, who I'd had like actually a very good run in with, like it was a nothing. Like he actually praised my interaction with him, but he knew who I was and leaked my name to CNN. I found out that CNN has their investigators that have access to private information, just the same as police do. Everybody has a price, and found my phone number, found my wife's phone number. Um, I got called in that night because the shooting happened about 9 o'clock, and then I worked till 6 a.m. By the time I got home, CNN had beat me to my wife, to my house. The New York Times came to my front step. I was doxxed for about a week, where I had to move my family away from the house to be safe. They came and vandalized the home, death threats, that whole thing. So this job people ask me, "Do you miss the job?" I'm like, "Yeah, I miss it in 2015. I haven't
Yeah.
missed that job in the last 6 years, so it's
So
been tough."
before Floyd incident, then your life was hell.
Yeah.
And so that's terrible. Okay, so May happens. Everyone in the world sees a video. There's no reason to go into the details because we all know. So
Yep.
does it just compound to the point where like you and your peers are now the most hated men um, and women, I guess, in the city and the states? I mean, is it just now like a kind of a war zone? Like everywhere you go, you have to have each other's backs because someone's coming after you.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's it's not nearly as well. It's hard to frame it because when you're in it, it doesn't seem that way. But then you take a step back. I'm a civilian now, right? I'm a retired police officer. You look at it, and they're shooting at police officers. When there's large, I'm sure you saw from July 4th, uh, groups of kids shooting Roman candles
Yeah,
and bottle rockets into police cars. Um, they shoot a favorite thing of some of these um, roving bands of kids is to take those Wisconsin legal aerial fireworks aren't legal in Minnesota. Ones that go boom or go up in the air aren't legal. So they're going to Wisconsin to get these giant mortars that you shoot out of tubes, and they're firing them at police cars. Yeah, that's pretty dangerous.
yeah.
It's while I don't, when you're in it, it doesn't seem like that way. But yeah, I mean, at times Minneapolis is an absolute war zone. Especially in 2020, we all saw the mostly peaceful protesting, right?
Here I am in a totally different state. I'm in Texas. We had our riots and stuff in Dallas, 30 miles away. Where I live, fortunately, we like our police officers. We have plenty of them, and we really don't have any crime. So I read a stat a couple years ago. There's been one murder in Southlake in 25 years, and that was an out of towner following another guy.
Mm.
Into our city. So we're kind of sheltered from that. But I saw the video and the fallout, and the first thing I thought of were my police officer friends. And I remember telling my wife and my kids, the most hated people in America will be police officers for the next decade or so, which is crazy because you mentioned 9/11 when we first started. That's why you became a peace officer. After 9/11, the most loved people in America were police officers and firefighters. We all saw the FDNY hats and NYPD hats.
Yep.
Heck, most of the TV shows that are on TV are, because of the police and the law enforcement and all that stuff. And here we are 20 plus years later, and we've completely reversed. I mean, how many people, we'll touch on your kids in a minute, but how many people would tell their kids, hey, you should be a cop? Like, no way. It's
Nope.
it's it's crazy. You actually make more money being a criminal, and you won't get
Yep.
arrested for it. And so I'm sorry you had to go through that. And I knew people were going through that. And again, I've got a lot of friends I felt terrible for. And it's awful. And it's probably not going to get any better anytime soon. I think we need more police, not less. And I think we need more civility. And doesn't matter what aisle you're in, left or right or somewhere in the middle.
It
Um,
shouldn't anyway.
you should, when you're in trouble, put it this way: those same people who are rioting and killing cops, when someone breaks in their house, what are the first three digits on their phone they call? 911.
Yep.
Every time.
Well, it's funny because during these protests and riots, we're on the perimeter making sure people don't come and run them over. Right, we're protecting their First Amendment rights to basically, well, you leave the First Amendment when you start assaulting police officers with Kansas soup and fireworks, but we're still protecting their right to protest.
Yeah.
Protesting us. Um, I forgot that you're from the Dallas area. The 5 Dallas police officers that were murdered in 2016. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
That was
I
as a
wasn't in
result
Dallas
of
at the time, but yes, I absolutely remember that.
that was backlash from the officer involved shooting in 2016 at my agency. So that was that time frame. That's when it all kind of started for me. So
Well, um, before we talk about you leaving the police force, you, while a police officer on your Instagram, were very adamant. And I want to know how this movement, if it went anywhere, but you were very adamant on you personally wanted to either be participant, a teacher, a trainer, a coach, or just were imploring the police officers departments to teach jujitsu and have better tactics to do things that won't. I mean, you and we train jujitsu. There are 1,000 different holds that are better and more effective than a knee on the back of someone's neck.
Yep.
And we could hold them down. I mean, heck, give someone an armbar or a Kimura, watch them try to swing at you with a broken arm. It's not going to happen. But there's choke holds that are to limit you and prevent you from losing your consciousness. And there's a lot of different things to do. And I know you were trying to push that. Did that movement go anywhere, or were they saying the last thing we're going to do is have you teach a cop to be even more dangerous?
So I think a big part of the struggle behind implementing widespread Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and just better training in general is, first of all, the budgets. Police departments are focusing a lot of money on recruiting and retention and not a lot of money on training. Second of all would be the cop ego, right? I mean, I had the opportunity in 2019 or 18, 19 probably, to go to Las Vegas. I go to Vegas probably 2-3 times a year, and I train at Hector Vasquez's gym, Cobrinha, Las Vegas, and I got a chance to roll with Helena Crevar. Are you familiar? She trains with Gordon Ryan.
The first guy, yes, not her.
I think she was 12 or 13 at the time, and I'm 37, 38, and she's beating me up. She's 12 years old. If you're a 37-year-old headstrong police officer from wherever, and you feel pretty good about where you're at in jiu-jitsu, and then you come in and get beat by a 12-year-old green belt, I get it, but it's
yep.
On the other hand, we all watched the George Floyd incident. We all watched these other incidents where it's knees, elbows, punching, kicking, tasing, zip zap, spray them, hit them with the baton, and it doesn't work. It looks terrible. Then there's public outcry, and then good cops. I considered myself a decent cop, but like good cops have to apologize for these people almost, and I'm not going to apologize for bad law enforcement. I'm me. We don't admonish the entire teaching profession whenever a teacher grooms a child. We say, oh, that guy's a pervert, or that gal's a pervert. We don't say, fuck teachers, pardon my language. You know what I mean? It's like we're running around, pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon. That was another Minnesota slogan. So
you actually took that sentence right out of my mouth, because there are bad professional athletes. There are bad teachers. We see what's happening every day on TV. There are bad politicians. There's bad presidents and ex-presidents, right? Name the profession. Someone out there is bad. And yet, if you look at, and I don't know what the number is, 50,000, 100,000 police officers, and then you look at how many actual bad incidents, and there are bad ones, obviously. You see them on the internet any day you want to look at. And it's a fraction of it. And it's just so unfortunate. Because it happens everywhere. And thank you. If you haven't been told enough, you're a hero. You were a hero when you put on the badge. You were a hero when you took it off. I think you're a product of, like you said, a terrible criminal justice system that has taken a good cop and a good person off the streets. But it did make you better, physically, emotionally, mentally. I'm sure it made your wife and kids feel safer that dad's coming home. So let's close the chapter on police part by just me saying thank you, and sorry. I mean, sorry that as a grown adult you have to have a profession that is here to, quote, protect and serve, and really is looked at in many cases worse than the actual criminals that are out there.
I appreciate that. Don't apologize. I'm not going to apologize for bad police. You shouldn't apologize for bad Americans.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so you're done. You're done being a police officer. What did you do? Did you have a plan? I mean, was it I quit and I don't know what I'm doing, or did you have a plan, a plan B, I guess?
So, yes and no. I have a friend, Mike Golick, who, well, and I got to give a shout out to Jason Swartz at Jiu-Jitsu 50. If you don't follow him, go follow him on Instagram. He's got a mobile app. It's geared toward making jiu-jitsu accessible. So I had kind of two streams here between Jason and Mike, and Mike is in the cannabis world, and he is making cannabis accessible to those who, cannabis education is the big thing because everybody can sell a can of THC juice or THC gummies, but not everybody can educate and help people in their wellness journey. It's a health supplement that a lot of people get relief from. I know that the FDA and the CDC and everybody else thinks it's evil, but it's helped me a ton. I have several pretty prominent symptoms of PTSD, but I'm able to manage a lot of that with careful introduction and application of various cannabinoids, and it works for me anyway. And I meet a lot of people now. I'm able to help the community in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's that going so far?
It's going great. Minnesota actually tomorrow becomes the 23rd state to legalize adult recreational use marijuana, cannabis. Now there's some steps that have to happen first, but I mean, you can possess 2 pounds of cannabis now in your home. You can have 8 plants. It's 8 or 5. Anyway, you can have plants, and then you can carry around 2 ounces on your person. So we went from 0 to 60 real quick, but it's exciting. I've become, since working for the government and now being out, become fiercely libertarian. I believe in individual liberties, individual choice, and to protect those choices at all levels. So ironic.
You want to give a plug to your company?
Officer. Yeah, Natrium Buck Hill. I'm on all social media as that. If you want to follow my next chapter, I'm on Instagram as Asian Cop Jesus, and I'm not giving up that handle. I'm not changing it.
It's too good.
But it is. But yes, Jiu-Jitsu 50 and Natrium Buck Hill. I own Natrium Buck Hill. Jason owns Jiu-Jitsu 50, but I'm Kyle the grappling dummy on there. We have some fun with it. Jason's a pretty cool guy. I'm sure you follow him on Instagram.
Sure. Yep.
He and Mike the cop and a few of the guys from Invictus Jiu-Jitsu started Fuzz Tape a while ago, and then I ended up buying it early last year. And it's in response to another tape company that came out and took away the law enforcement discount and then apologized to the world for even having it in 2020. And then Fuzz Tape was formed, and the rest is history. I try to use Fuzz Tape to help the next generation of jiu-jitsu athletes. Thus, when Tyler and Ryan had introduced me to you, I thought, wow, what a great way to, accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish with Fuzz Tape. I applaud you, Dan, as a man and a father, for doing what you do with your kids. I love it. It's you're going to be the reason that we, America carries on, a strong generation, creating a good work ethic. I think athletics is an absolute must for kids. It teaches them discipline. It teaches them courage. It teaches them, humility. It's a perfect, I think you're doing a great job with your kids, Dan, and I love watching your guys' story, the PowerHouse story, right? It's a great story. It's fun to watch. You guys are out there killing it. Congratulations on your Masters Worlds win last year. That was exciting.
Worlds is next month.
I'm sorry, Nationals win. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you win Worlds last year?
No, I won Pans this year. I won Nationals this year. And Pans is in a month, so don't jinx me. But listen, okay. I'm glad you brought up Fuzz Tape because you have sponsored Stella at Fuzz Tape. I now have half my gym on this. For those who don't know, a lot of my friends actually obviously are in the jiu-jitsu world. And for those who don't know, we get really messed up fingers and hands through jiu-jitsu. And a lot of it is from grappling and holding on like this for dear life in some cases, if you're on defense. And if you're on offense, from doing this. Look at your fingers. So what happens is you take these tape this tape and you wrap your fingers. You know, golfers do the same. They do it for sweat. This is less for sweat than it is to put your fingers in place and give you a decent grip. And I've worn um, 15 different types of tape. In fact, most people just get the white tape you get at CVS. This stuff holds on, and it holds on tight. My daughter uses it. Well, obviously, because you sponsor, thank you for that. I use it. A big chunk of my teammates use it. I've had other people from other schools use it. I think it's awesome that you do it. You had started it when you were a police officer, and I know that you've got the flashing sirens on it. So anyway, go to fuzztape dot with co. We're going to put it at the bottom, I'm sure, but fuzztape.co.
Yeah.
And if you want to help Stella out, since she is, I want her to be the salesperson of the year. You're teaching her business, by the way, because now she goes to class and she sees people wearing other tape and she gives them crap. And she's like, why aren't you wearing fuzz tape? And then she tells me to go get them more fuzz tape. So I believe the code word now, which we changed from Stella BJJ, is now PowerHouse. If you get some fuzz tape, you then get a discount. So you didn't need to do that. Obviously, we're connected through Tyler and Ryan. I did ask Tyler a week ago. I said, listen, tell me about Kyle, something I don't know. And I mean, I can't even read it because it was like 17 paragraphs. I'll send it to you offline. But in a nutshell, you're the nicest guy. You would give your shirt off your back. He's never met a better human. I mean, it was really, really touching. And that's why I want to make sure you get it. But there are a lot of people who think you're a great guy because you are a great guy. So I think that's awesome. Now, speaking of Stella, as we wrap up here, I told her I was talking to you today, and she asked if I could ask a few questions. So these are the questions from Stella. There's 3 of them.
Here we go.
One, I believe you answered it. Actually, you did. It's what made you think of making fuzz tape? So you answered that one. Second question is, how did fuzz tape get its name? Why fuzz tape? She loves the name.
The fuzz, right? The 5-0 fuzz. We're the fuzz, and it's I guess I didn't create the company, but Jason Swartz and Mike the Cop and a few others did, and they wanted it to be subtle. So many law enforcement related companies or even tactical companies. I mean, you've all seen them. They got the Spartan helmet, they have the thin blue line down the center, and it's all very cliche. And there's a lot of places where it's not safe to identify yourself as a police officer. So they wanted something that, it's a part of something, but it's not so overtly obvious what it is. And it's usable for people who maybe just support police too. So
before I get to our third question, you just brought something up about supporting police. Are you jaded? Are you? I could see you be angry at maybe prosecutors and city officials and elected officials, but are you jaded at the police department? I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth and say you're anti-police, but what is your sentiment on police?
I love the police. I'm also, I still train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm still involved in Jiu-Jitsu 5-0. I still challenge some of the issues at hand. I've been very vocal about calling out when I see bad tactics, when I call out bad cops, because if you can't call out the bad, your words don't hold any weight if you're not willing to be self-deprecating to a certain extent. So it was just, I love it. It's given me a healthy appreciation being a police officer for the police and what they do. And as long as they're doing the right thing, I'll always support them. And if you're doing the wrong thing, I'm going to call you out. I did when I was a police officer, and I still will. So
awesome. Her last one wasn't a question; it was a statement. It basically said she thinks the colors are badass. Her words.
All right.
Family life. What do you got here? Tell me about your family.
I got me a wife and 3 kids. Yeah, yeah. I've got 3 kids. One's just going into middle school, and the other 2 are late elementary schoolers. So we stay busy. I'm sure that you're no stranger to that, right? You're in that athletic stage now, man. You are always running. You put 300,000 miles on that truck.
Yeah. That's why I stole the sports car, right? Because I got it wasn't practical.
Yeah, no, it's been my family's been great. They were supportive of me when I was a police officer. They're supportive of me now that I own a dispensary. I was a little worried. It's funny, Dan. I'm more comfortable my kids telling the rest of their class what Daddy does for a living now than when I was a police officer. I quit being a cop so I could sell drugs. so
That's awesome. Well,
so
listen, I think it's great. This has been such an awesome story, and I know we can go on forever because I just love this stuff, and I love that you're better for your family. I'm so just bothered because you got taken off the streets, probably in many ways by your decision, but really against your will. You couldn't control your surroundings,
yep.
and that's frustrating. And look, there are bad cops. It is what it is. I mean, I'm a
Hmm.
brown guy who, over the course of my life, I've gotten my ass beat by cops,
Hmm.
three of them, and that was, I think, in 2015, and I think in 2013 the day I bought a very nice sports car. I bought an Audi R8, and I was in my gi
Hmm.
going to class. A guy should not be driving a fancy car like that and be brown. And I got pulled over and had a gun to my head, or guns drawn. Sorry, before I even got out, and it sucks. And that is
Hmm.
four bad cops
Yep.
in my lifetime that I've seen. And I know there's dozens others out there, but at the end of the day, there are 99.9% of them are good cops who are
Yep.
trying to protect people and trying to put the bad guys away. So you'll always be a great cop. I think it's once a cop, always a cop. You'll always be a great cop. You're an awesome dude, like Tyler said, and like so many of others have said. I'm going to highlight your company, your Instagram, and all the other stuff, so everyone can help build your world and grow your world. And when I come to Minnesota, which I do, I have told Ryan and Tyler I would come. Then I'll
Got to
go
come
train
up
with you.
here.
Is
Hell
that
yeah,
cool?
dude.
All
Absolutely.
right.
I hope you do.
I certainly will. Look, I appreciate it. Go spend time with your family. Thank you so much. This is why we do these podcasts, because you're a powerhouse, both on the streets as a police officer. Now you're going to be a powerhouse in the marijuana business. And you're certainly a powerhouse when it comes to protecting all of us fighters and our fingers. So thanks again, Kyle. I think you're awesome. I appreciate you, and thanks for getting on here.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right.
Hey, hope you're enjoying the podcast. Quick word from our sponsors, OC Local. We have one and now a second restaurant coming up. This is the best food, beers, drinks, and entertainment you can get in all of Orange County. Go check out OC Local.